Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Dr. Griffin Cole, who's here to share with us how fluoride in our drinking water poses a health risk to children. So have you ever questioned, is there any safe level of fluoride that we should have in our water? Well, today's guest is going to answer just that question. Dr. Griffin Cole specializes in biological dentistry. He is board certified in naturopathic medicine and earned a degree in integrative biological dental medicine. He also received his mastership in the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. He's the past president of the IAOMT and has been featured on numerous local and national radio and television programs, including World News Tonight with Diane Sawyer. So welcome to the show, Dr. Griffin Cole.
Thanks for having me.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this. I understand there was a federal case against the EPA over the safety of adding fluoride to our public water supply. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, so this started as a petition 8 years ago. The Food and Water Watch, the Fluoride Action Network, and a few other groups petitioned the EPA under the Toxic Substance Control Act. Anybody can petition the EPA to look at a certain chemical or substance that they feel is harmful. So after they petitioned, the EPA just rejected it, and so they took them to court. And so 2017 is when this started.
That's just unreal that it's taken this amount of time. So what does this decision mean in the end of adding fluoride to our water?
Hopefully this is the end, but honestly, the court doesn't have the legal authority to tell the EPA to ban fluoridation, but the judge did issue an incredibly strong decision based on a very careful assessment of all the scientific evidence and ruled that fluoridation poses, quote, an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children, and the one thing that the EPA cannot do in the face of the court's finding is to ignore that risk, end quote. So the judge indeed found harm at the current levels and sent the EPA back to re-examine the entire fluoridation policy.
So why do these court cases take so long?
Yeah, there were lots of delays and COVID and some other things, but honestly, the judge needed the time to hear all the scientific evidence and extensive expert testimony by some of the world's foremost scientists, and then allow the EPA time to try to counter it, which they failed to do. In addition, the judge was waiting on the latest results of the National Toxicology Program's review of the published evidence on fluoride neurotoxicity, which overwhelmingly showed harm to children's brains.
Wow, that's just staggering to hear that. Are there other health implications that fluoride is posing to the public?
Yeah, there's a list of it. It affects the thyroid gland, it calcifies the pineal gland, it hurts the kidneys, it affects every enzyme system in the body. But the most important one, and what this case was all about, was the effect it has on children's brains.
So why was adding fluoride to our water supply so heavily promoted for decades?
That's a great question, and one that we've been asking for about 50 years now. Honestly, if fluoride did everything that the pro-fluoridationists claimed it did for reducing cavities, then perhaps it would be a top 10 health achievement, as the CDC has claimed for so many years. But honestly, oral health reports from all over the world show that fluoride is ineffective. And unfortunately, both the CDC and the American Dental Association have really ignored decades worth of studies indicating harm from fluoride. And they've been promoting the health of the tooth over the health of children's brains.
That's just really hard to believe. Do you think there's been a shift in public perception about fluoride over the years?
I do. There's been a lot of talk, thankfully, in the last 10 years about this issue. And to me, the most telling thing that I think is getting out, besides this effect on children's brains, is that, the court was able to conclude that based on all the evidence, that pregnant women drinking water at the current U.S. recommended levels presents a risk of a decrease in IQ, as I mentioned, but ranging from a low end of 2.5 points up to almost 7 IQ points in children. And just a little context on this, the court noted that an average loss of just 1 IQ point was associated with reduced educational attainment, employment status, productivity, and even earned wages. And these are all substantial public health concerns.
You would think that that would be on the forefront of everyone's discussion about how our next generation is being affected.
For sure. And again, this was most of these studies, there's about 82 worldwide studies on these effects on children's IQ and their cognitive effects. And so, we've got over a decade now of studies. And and thankfully, this judge took the time to look at all these in detail and make what we think is the only ruling that he could have made.
Really sounds like the right judge is involved in this case and helping this move forward in the way that it is.
For sure. We were very excited. Judge Edward Chen.
Is there any benefit to having fluoride in our drinking water?
No, honestly, there's not. If people want to apply it topically, obviously there is an antibacterial effect if you apply it topically, but drinking it does absolutely nothing beneficial for the teeth. And as we've just spent the last 5 minutes discussing, it does quite a bit of harm. And now because of this ruling that at the very least the EPA has to go re-examine the safety and efficacy of fluoride. And we hope they're not going to try to appeal this ruling because it'll just drag this issue out for years. And, if they choose to use lawfare instead of doing their job, which is to protect the health of Americans, then unfortunately we'll see hundreds of thousands of children continue to be harmed by fluoride.
Wow. Wow, I just have no words for that. My goodness. Well, so
Yeah.
what's next with this court case? I mean, what happens next?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, so at the very least, the EPA has to go back and re-examine. And so I don't know what that means in detail. I pray it's more than them just sort of sitting back and just discussing what we already know. Again, I don't want to see lawfare used here. I'm hoping that they're gonna, at the very least, they need to lower the level to extremely low amounts, which would really mean just turn off the fluoride. That's the quickest solution to this. Let's just turn off the fluoride. We've shown over the years it has really no positive effect on the teeth. I mean, there are plenty of studies to show that all these rates of how these decay levels were so much lower in fluoridated areas. It just isn't true when you look at the actual data. So we're hoping that they're going to do more than just go back and talk about it.
Let's say in a good case scenario that they decide to turn off the fluoride in the water. How long does it take for that to cycle out of our water supply?
That's a great question. Believe it or not, it's immediate now, meaning that once they turn off that dial that puts the fluoride in the water, no more is being added. So as far as time, it would be just whatever was still in the residual water, which would be used up very quickly. So it's a quick solution and a good one.
Oh, it sounds like such an easy way to resolve
Yes.
some very major issues. So how do we compare to some of the other countries when we talk about fluoride in our water?
What a great question. So believe it or not, 95% of the world does not fluoridate. Only 5% does. And of that 5%, which is about 11 countries, the US provides fluoridated water to more human beings than all the rest of the countries combined. So this is definitely an American thing. It certainly started that way back in 1945, and it's just once that bandwagon got rolling, it just continued to go. And in spite of all the scientific evidence that showed that not only is it not preventing cavities, but it's causing all this harm, and it just needs to end.
So where can people go for more information and to get involved?
There's really two great sources. One is the Fluoride Action Network. They were one of the plaintiffs in this trial. Their website is fluoridealert.org. And then a really great international academy. It's called the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. And their website is IAOMT.org.
Well, Dr. Cole, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Dr. Cole. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about the health risk of having fluoride in our drinking water. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.